Welcome to Mash the Gas Podcast. Mash the Gas Podcast. Your weekly breakdown of every NASCAR Cup Series race. Here are your hosts, Kevin Batstone and Jeff Davis.
Welcome back, NASCAR fans, to another episode of Mash the Gas Podcast. We're here to break down all the action from the Brickyard 400, the return to the oval, which I call the rectangle, at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. 30 years to the date, a lot to break down here. Join me now, Mr. Jeff Davis. Who mashed the gas the hardest this week on our return to the Brickyard?
Well, Kevin, we got to give it up to the 5-car of Kyle Larson, getting his 4th win of the season for Mr. H. He only led 8 laps. But it's that last one that always counts. So that's 21 wins under his belt with Hendrick and 25 career wins. So, way to go. Number 5, mash the gas.
Definitely a big win for those guys. And, with Kyle being there for the Indy 500 earlier this year, where he ran the double, sort of the double. He never got to the Coke 600. We're going to try that again in 2025, I hope. I know this was a big win for him. And for it to come on the 30-year anniversary of Jeff Gordon's inaugural win in 1994, big win for those guys. A lot to unpack around the restart with Keselowski here in a moment. But, hey, a win's a win, and that's pretty cool for Kyle Larson. Another crown jewel. He just continues to win on all of the prestigious stages, tracks, championships, you name it. And that's another one in the books for him. We'll see what happens going forward for all of Hendrick Motorsports, but this is definitely good momentum going into this mid-season break, if you will, before the playoffs.
Yeah, it really is. And like you said, with Jeff Gordon getting the inaugural win there, what a special win for Hendrick Motorsports. And, I was kind of thinking Kyle Larson at his age, he might be going for that record. Like I said, he's got actually 27 career wins, but 21 with Hendrick Motorsports. But right now, he is 3rd most wins for Hendrick Motorsports of all time. Of course, we know Jimmy Johnson got 83 and Jeff Gordon got 93. Is Kyle Larson going to break one of those records, Kevin?
Well, just doing some, real simple math, he's going to need over 60 wins to get in between Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon. So if he averaged 6 wins for 10 years straight, that still puts him in his window of his age. You think he can do 6 wins a year for 10 years straight? That's quite a bit to ask. Just ask old Kyle Busch, who hasn't even found victory lane yet.
Oh, and that's a whole different story we'll get to in a minute. But as much racing is in Kyle Larson's blood, I could see him almost pulling a Mark Martin and just driving until, he's 100 years old and getting some of them wins. He might want to go for breaking those records, and be like, I could do 1 more year, maybe 2 more years, maybe 3, whatever it takes. But I don't know. I think he'll come within striking distance. He's a hell of a race car driver, as we all know. But overall, really good day for Kyle Larson and, Chase Elliott getting the P10 out of this. Old William Byron and Bowman, unfortunately got in the 30s, 31st and P38. But overall, it was a pretty good race. A lot of interesting stuff, a lot of fuel problems we're going to be talking about, Kevin.
Yeah, definitely a lot of storylines coming out of Indy here and a lot of things to unpack. But yeah, HMS, like you said, tough day. William Byron hard hit. Alex Bowman got involved in that mess as well there a little bit late. But, I want to give a shout out again to Cliff Daniels and just incredible crew chief. He's so calm, cool, and collected. They had a chance to interview him during that red flag. And, they were kind of the best on fuel outside of the 12 of Blaney. But once it got down to that final restart, fuel was kind of out the window except for the 6 of Keselowski. So, Larson ended up in a really good position there with the 6 peeling off the pit road, coming back to the overtime green-white checkered. Now, if you tuned into the 12 of Ryan Blaney's radio after that wreck into 1, he wasn't so happy. He's kind of going, what the F NASCAR? We should have thrown the yellow and done a re-choose. A lot of controversy around this. It kind of depends on where you stand. I feel if the rule is the car peels off the 6 of Keselowski, he doesn't have fuel coming to the restart. He's got to come to pit road. So the inside line moves up. It's not that the, outside where the 12 of Blaney is gets to move down. That would have been on the choose. Now, Blaney had the option to choose to line up behind the 6 coming to that restart, but he thought if the 6 is going to run out, I'm going to run at the back of him. So it's kind of a catch-22 here. I understand why the 12 is frustrated, but the rule is the rule, Jeff.
It is, but that's so tough. The fuel issues were definitely a problem, just like you mentioned, and one thing I thought that was really cool though, Kevin, was, Kyle Busch, he got wrecked. He knew he wasn't going to run really well. I know he was trying to get that, in the top 5 there. But with Bubba Wallace running out of gas. Kyle Busch came out behind him and pushed him down to pit road, and was actually able to keep on the track and get a top 10. So pretty cool on that for Bubba Wallace, and kind of cool for Kyle Busch to do something kind of classy for once.
Yeah, take it any way you can get it. Fuel definitely was a huge problem towards the end of the race, especially I just didn't understand how Keselowski and Matt McCall thought they could stretch that thing nearly 60 laps, and they almost did, coming back to the restart. Obviously, the calculations there on the, pace laps coming back to the green, they said, we just can't make it. So, again, going back to that restart, I don't think there's anything wrong with what happened there. Should they have re-chose with the 6 peeling to pit road? I don't see how they could do that because the pace car was already off. He was already ducking off. They were coming to get the green. Right. I don't see any reason there. So the only thing that could have happened, according to Elton Sawyer, is the 5 could have jumped the restart, which he didn't. He still waited because at that point, the 12 was a control car, right? Position goes to P2 there because he assumes the control car position, and they both fired off at the same time, got a good launch into turn 1. So again, I understand why Blaney was fired up, and he was pretty much calling NASCAR every swear word in the book, but the rule is the rule. And he knew. That's why he was so pissed. He knew if the 5 got in front of him, his day was over.
Yeah, it was. And hey, at least, Ryan Blaney, he's in a really good position. The 12 car did come in P3. So, I know he was pissed off about it. Still managed to get a top 5, was able to get some good points out of it. So overall, I understand why he was upset. But like you said, the rules are the rules, Kevin.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I stand on it as well. So, and I'm sure Blaney, look, he wanted to win. It's a big race, right? Roger Penske, it's his, it's in his ownership. They won there for the Indy 500. It's just a prestigious race. So, will the return to the Brickyard live up to what we all hoped it would? I think that's going to be a conversation that continues on. I don't think the crowd was particularly great, but you got to remember that this place holds over 300,000 in grandstand attendance. So even if there was 100,000 there, it's going to look like, it was a third full because it was. So,
right.
Hard to say if attendance makes for a good turnout. Obviously NBC, had some issues there at the end. They had to cut away to breaking news so that the finale of this thing ended up over on USA, which, was unfortunate for folks that couldn't see the end. Right. So I don't know what that does for ratings there, but overall the return of the Brickyard, Jeff, I think I'd rather see it on the oval than the Brickyard road course, if I had to pick between the two. But to me, it just seemed like typical Indianapolis, long green flag runs, fuel mileage.
And it's definitely a track it's hard to pass at, you know what I mean? And, Carson Hocevar, he's not making too many friends this year. I mean, he's got to get his P's and Q's straight if he's going to run with these Cup drivers. Because as we know, these race car drivers, they do not forget. So for him, taking out Jimmy Johnson and Joey Logano just so he could try to squeeze 3 wide going into a turn, just did not work out. So Carson Hocevar, yeah, man, he's got to watch his P's and Q's, brother.
Yeah, he certainly does. I mean, he still came home with a P12 finish. Carson is an aggressive race car driver. We've seen that, but I think he's just in that rookie stage. He doesn't want to end up with the nickname of like a Chastain situation. Because right now, when they get around the 77, they don't know what's going to happen. I mean, this guy's, he's fined for taking out the 21 a few weeks ago under yellow. He's been shown to get into the back of guys, get in the way of lap traffic, things of that nature. So, rookie stuff that I think he'll get ironed out. He wants to get up and win as much as, any of these guys, of course. But when you start putting race cars in the garage and tearing up good equipment and bringing out red flags, that's when it's going to become, a big issue there for those guys. But, that's just part of it. That's good hard racing. Sometimes you end up on the bad end of it. We saw it happen with William Byron on the backstretch there. That was a much harder hit than it looked, Jeff. I think if it wasn't for those soft walls, we would have been dealing with some serious stuff there. So kudos to NASCAR because that was a hard hit for the 24 early.
Oh, that was a hell of a lick, man. Yeah, he hit hard. I did not expect him to come out as quickly as he did. The emergency crews were all out there as fast as possible. I think they did a damn good job, but definitely a scary hit. If that would have been 20 years ago, you're right. I don't think he'd be just climbing out of that car. They'd probably taken him to the hospital, Kevin.
Yeah, for sure. So, good stuff there. We never want to see drivers getting injured out there. So good safety on the track and all the, safety teams there. But, a couple other storylines, Jeff, that I wanted to touch on was obviously the penalty that we saw handed down to Chase Elliott.
Yeah.
on the blend rule there, which, you heard Letarte and Burton going back and forth in the booth. You heard Chase on the radio going, I saw what NASCAR said in the driver's meet, and I did exactly that. And then we look at the replay, and it is they need to just ball and strike this thing, Jeff. I think that's really where the confusion came in. Can I touch the white line? Can I not? There's 2 white lines. Which white line is it? A lot of confusion there on that blend rule.
Yeah, and with the the drivers meeting and the sheet they handed out of the rules said that you cannot run on the racing surface. That's not the racing surface. That is a part of pit road. That's coming onto the track. He was not on the racing surface. So for him to get penalized for that, man, I don't think I've ever heard him say so many F words on the radio. And, like you said, with Alan Gustafson, he's such a good crew chief as well, man. But he really was trying to cool him down. But that was, I think that was a really shitty call for sure.
Well, I think it just needed to be a little bit more understandable, right? If there was that much confusion on, we've seen every team is going to try and push the envelope, whether that's pit road speed, entry, or men over the wall, right? There's always that gray area that you can push. Whereas this, can you touch the line? Can you not? Right? Because they showed that view of turns 1 and 2 there coming off the access road. And you saw everybody was trying to carry as much speed as they could to blend coming off the access road down the back straightaway off turn 2, right? Kind of unique. We don't go to a lot of racetracks that have access roads that blend off the back straightaway. So that's what makes Indy a little bit more unique. But I just don't remember in all of the years before this, right, this being that much of an issue. We've seen guys do that exact move for years and years and years, and now all of a sudden it's become an issue. So I understand why Chase Elliott was frustrated. Those guys had a fast car.
Yeah, they really did. And, interestingly enough, another Cup champion, Brad Keselowski, he had some bad luck. But, not only did he run out of gas, he also suffered the same penalty during that stop, which was just as, confused by the ruling of the NASCAR officials. Much better response than old Chase Elliott. But, he said, so either I don't know how to read or they don't know how to officiate, one of the two. That's what he said on the radio. But, that's something that needs to be kind of solidified in the rules. I thought it was kind of a bullshit call in my opinion, Kevin.
Yeah, I didn't quite like it just because there was too many discrepancies there that just didn't make sense. I mean, just call it. You can't touch the white line coming up, racing service or not. You just can't put your tires above this white line. Make it that simple. And I think that, you won't have a lot of confusion like that going forward. But you're right. I mean, Brad Keselowski, up and down day for sure. He overcame the penalty, was up in position to win this race. Had the cautions not have fallen, they might have just had enough, Jeff, but they had to peel off, and BK ends up bringing it home P21. But hey, man, it's a shot at the Brickyard 400. You're going to roll the dice. You're going to take some chances out there, and it just didn't pan out for the 6.
And I was kind of hoping the 6 would actually get up there. The 6 has been kind of struggling a little bit. Obviously, we know Kyle Busch, and he's been struggling. He's just having a really, really bad year, and it shows. But that's what really surprised me is shitty luck is, old Kyle Busch has had to see him go out and give Bubba Wallace that push, get him back onto to pit road so he could fuel up and helped him get a P5 out of that. I thought was pretty classy. I mean, NASCAR really is a big family. Kyle Busch knew that he was toast. He's already wrecked. He's lucky he didn't get a DNF out of it. So he was just stoked to be out back on the track. But to be able to just help someone out like that, I thought was pretty cool, Kevin.
Yeah, anytime he sees, good sportsmanship like that definitely goes a long way. And, he builds some allies out on the racetrack. I don't think Kyle Busch would have given just anybody a pushback. So, hopefully things like that, get remembered in the future. But yeah, Bubba Wallace, look, got his first stage win, Jeff, since 2022. Picked up some stage points there. Good for him. And, on a, kind of a must win situation, if you will. I'm still considering the 23 in a must win. Can he point his way in? Yes. But these guys have to approach these next 4 races after the break with a must win attitude.
Yeah. He's only 7 points below the cutoff line. And, Ross Chastain's right up above the cut line with seven points, and we already talked about this. There's only 4 spots left. We've got 5 races to go. And Martin Truex, obviously, he's going to point his way in. Ty Gibbs is second there. He's 42 in the positive. But, if we don't, depending on points, depending on winners, Ty Gibbs might make it in on points, but I still think he might get a victory, Kevin.
I think Ty Gibbs is going to find victory lane. I think there's a good chance Bubba finds victory lane. Remember, Daytona is one of those races we're going to. Huge wild card. Those guys have shown speed, on the super speedway side. So if I'm those guys, I definitely have that circled. But, just as much as anybody else, you can end up on the hook from the big one. So 54 Ty Gibbs, again, shows up with speed, qualifies in the top 10. Didn't have the finish those guys were looking for because they ended up with another engine issue, something similar to what we saw in Pocono. Ended up 23rd, not where they wanted to run, but they had to bring that car down. It sounded sickly ill again. It wasn't quite dumping the chocolate milk that we saw last week, but those guys are definitely having some engine discrepancies these past few weeks.
Yeah, they definitely have. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I still have a screenshot of what looked like chocolate milk coming out of those exhaust pipes on the side there. And then I don't think I've ever seen that before quite like that. You know what I mean? So whether he gets in on points or gets the win, it'd be pretty cool for him. Talking about Brad a minute ago, at least he does have the one win. So he is in the playoffs right now. So, at least he's already in the playoffs. Kevin, and kind of speaking of bad luck, let's talk about the 19 a little bit. Obviously we were just talking about him getting in on points, most definitely with 108 points in the positive. But, he ran really well in practice and he had a good starting position, went through inspections, passed inspections, and then had unimproved adjustments after inspections and had to start at the rear of the field. What are your thoughts on that, Kev?
Well, that's a tough deal. For any team out there to have to go to the rear, especially at a track like Indianapolis where it is so tough to pass, you're pretty much relying on pit strategy to make your way to the front. And, those guys were trying to do a little bit of off sequence, pit when others weren't, try to get some track position that way. Ended up finishing 8th in stage 2. So they were, kind of on the rebound a bit, but, just more bad luck for the 19 of Martin Truex Jr. And, we know with this being his final full-time season in NASCAR, he might run a couple off races from what we're hearing, but for his last full-time go, he's still in the best, as far as points to point his way in there, Jeff. But I think, just like I was saying earlier, you got to go into these next 4 races to the playoffs with a must-win attitude. He's 108 to the good.
Yeah, he's definitely, I think he's in on points, but because I just like we said last week, we're not going to see 4 more different winners making it in. I think we'll see another win maybe out of, Denny Hamlin or William Byron or even Blaney, getting another win in there. So I think he's probably pretty good to actually get into the playoffs, but I really do want to see him win. I don't want to see him go out in the very first round of the playoffs if that happens. Martin Truex is a really, really good guy. I think he's always been, great attitude. Met him. We've both met him in Texas here a couple of times. Really nice dude. So hopefully he'll get a win, Kevin.
Yeah, and I think he will. Again, we've talked about Gibbs. Those guys just been really strong. They're outside of Hendrick. They're kind of leading the way. Denny Hamlin, I thought was going to have a much better day. Obviously, he did lead 21 laps, ended up in that wreck, and that took him out of contention. So, JGR, not the day they were looking for in their entirety, including with Truex. So, take the midseason break here and get ready to go in Richmond on the other side.
Yeah, it'll be cool, man. And I'll tell you another thing that I was thinking about while watching the very end of the race and, where everyone finished up and seeing Kyle Larson, finishing in first and Ryan Blaney finishing P3. I met those guys here in Texas a number of years ago. And Kyle Larson was still with Chip Ganassi, and Ryan Blaney, it was his rookie year, and he was running with the Wood brothers in the 21 car. So, yeah, I've got a couple hats from both their rookie seasons. But I was also looking at my hat of Chase Elliott when he was actually running the 24 car for his first year of Motor Hendrick Sports. I love collecting my old hats. You know that, Kevin.
NASCAR memorabilia is definitely part of this sport. People love to wear hat, shirts, collectibles, die casts, you name it. And from all the things I've seen on 2024, merchandise sales are good. A lot of new young fans coming into the sport. Sport's definitely doing well. I think anytime we get on national TV like NBC, that's good. It's unfortunate they had to cut the end of that race off due to other obligations with NBC, but it's part of it. We'll get through the Olympic break here. I think it's going to be good for these guys. I know Brad Keselowski was pretty vocal about calling for all of NASCAR to shut down for these next few weeks, including the shops, team members, workers, you name it.
They deserve a break. I know it's only 2 weeks, but as hard as working as these crews are, especially the crew chiefs, they're not going to take much time off. They'll probably take a weekend off, for each one to hang out with the family, or maybe a day or two during the week. But I don't see anyone like, Cliff Daniels or Gustafson, some of those guys or Gavehart. I don't see them taking a full 2 week break, because they're getting prepared. They're getting prepared for Richmond.
They have to be. It's nice to enjoy some downtime. They got a couple few days coming up, 20 days exactly before we're actually flags drop in Richmond. So hopefully these guys can break away a little bit and hit the reset button and get ready to go. I know a lot of guys probably wanted a much better weekend out of Indy. I'm sure Blaney's still kicking himself, but he gets over pretty quick. He's locked in. He doesn't have the stress of a Bubba Wallace or some of these other guys. And a little bit of news coming up here into 25, Jeff. We've been touching on each week. With Gene Haas obviously separating away from Stewart Haas Racing, we have learned that Cole Custer is going to come back to Cup and is going to run one of the Cup teams for the new Gene Haas team with the Cup Series. And there's also in the rumor mill that Hailie Deegan is top of the list for the Xfinity ride for Gene Haas right now.
Oh, you're kidding me. I have not heard that one. That's great. I didn't know she was going to be getting another chance at it or not. We kind of touched on that last week as well. So that would be pretty cool. Hailie's got a great personality. She likes to race. She likes to win. But if she does get that chance, this is probably her last chance. So if she blows it, she won't be running any of the NASCAR series, I don't think, the rest of her life. So if she does get that opportunity, she better take some really good advantage of it and start kicking some ass, Kevin.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity. That's what I understand, is that they are in conversations with Hailie as far as, for the Xfinity team. And then, as I mentioned, with Cole Custer making the move over for the Cup side for Gene. So that's, good for Custer. I think he's definitely earned it. He's run well down in the Xfinity series. He's shown that he can win races and is definitely consistent. So, and yeah, real good for Hailie, for another opportunity. It was kind of, digging into that a little bit and just listen to a lot of drivers' takes and analysts from around the sport on Hailie. And really, it goes back to her starting with Toyota and TRD. The development plan that those guys have is very different than Ford. Ford's a much more mature racing organization that doesn't really focus on a lot of younger talent like Toyota does. And so, some people are speculating that the TRD development program lasted too little. Obviously, then we were racing during COVID, so practice and things of that nature were, almost didn't exist. So a lot of her testing took place on her own go-kart track and wherever she could find laps. So, I think it's a combination of the early development for her as a driver. And then I look at AM Racing, right? I mean, it's 2 weeks in a row. Josh Berry fills in this 15 car, DNFs both times, right? Exact stuff that Hailie Deegan was dealing with. I understand accidents happen, but Hailie was on that bad end of it with AM Racing a lot. Just poor equipment, qualified poorly, was in the back, getting caught up in wrecks. And yeah, Joey Logano had a decent finish for them at Chicago, but overall that 15 AM car, I haven't really seen the performance out of. So I don't think it was entirely Hailie.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. I mean, Hailie is a good driver, but she has, what we call teams that are just not well funded. And if you're not a well funded team with good sponsors and have that money coming in, because as we know, NASCAR's as far as an organization themselves is getting pretty stingy, in my opinion, about the money that they're making off of these races and not sharing some more of that with these teams. If NASCAR would be able to give that split a little bit more, I think a lot of drivers of these underfunded teams would actually be able to perform better, because they're obviously going to have a little bit more cash to spend on their equipment. So, I know there's a lot of stuff with, like Dale Jr. talking about NASCAR and charter teams and the cost of what it is. And it's like, it's getting the point, especially like in the truck series or even a lot of the teams in the Xfinity series, where it's like, we pay to come here. We actually don't make money because we're not finishing good enough to even get a check out of it, or at least to get a check to cover our expenses. And if that becomes the case, I don't know what's going to happen with some of these lower series, Kevin.
Well, and I think that's what we're seeing happening. We've seen Stewart Haas back out, right? And we just see how difficult it is for these teams to not only run financially, but then to have this, the sponsors backing them. And we see a team like Trackhouse, it's a good example, great organization over there, Justin Marks and Pitbull, great backing, great sponsors, great partners. But, if you really look at the 1 and the 99, Do you consider them a weekly winner? I mean, sure, Daniel Suarez did win Atlanta earlier this year in that very, very close finish. So Suarez is locked in, but we're not having the Chastain conversations, having him up there contending for wins, or even the 99 of Suarez. These guys just aren't a front pack team right now. And, one could argue they have the sponsors, they got Busch Light, they have Tootsie's, they have the money, they got Pitbull behind them, and they still don't have the speed that Hendrick and Gibbs have.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, I'll chalk that up to kind of being a newer team. I mean, at least they have a good alliance, but yeah, they've got plenty of money, obviously, with their owners. So I don't know if it's a combination of the drivers themselves, because, Ross Chastain had a pretty good year last year. This year, he just hasn't quite had the muster to really get up and in there. So I don't know what's going on with that. I mean, yeah, he is 7 points above the cut line, so he's doing okay, but he's not having the season that he did last year, Kevin.
Well, if you had asked me back in January, do you think we'll get to the midseason break and not have Chastain in victory lane? I would have said no. Yeah, like you mentioned, he is 7 points to the good, but that could change in a heartbeat, especially with Daytona, Michigan, even Richmond lurking here. These are not easy racetracks to go in and just survive and have what we used to call a good points day, back when we would actually do, points racing in the Winston Cup days. So, we'll see. Teams get hot. We saw Chris Buescher get hot this time last year. We see, Tony Stewart used to be a guy that would get hot in the summertime, didn't win all year, and all of a sudden would win when it counted. So I'm certainly not writing the one of Ross Chastain out, but that is an example of, a highly funded team, good sponsors, and they're just not. We're not having the conversations with, 4 wins with Kyle Larson or 3 wins with Denny Hamlin. So, and that's what makes NASCAR interesting. It's good to see RFK finally finding some success. We saw BK have some speed, find victory lane. Chris Buescher almost wins Kansas. I still think Chris Buescher is a playoff worthy car.
I agree with you there. And, he's only 17 points in the positive. I think, Chris Buescher, like you just mentioned, he got hot at the end of last year. He could pull that off again, get himself in the playoffs. But as far as back to Ross Chastain a little bit, okay, I know he's only 7 points in the positive. Bubba Wallace is 7 to the negative. I'm kind of wondering now if old Rowdy and the, old Kyle Busch, maybe he was pissed off so much at Ross Chastain that he's like, you know what? I'm going to make sure Bubba gets some points out of it, because Bubba wouldn't have only -7. If he didn't get that push from Kyle Busch and get down pit lane for a splash of Sunoco, he'd be probably about 20, 30 points down right now. So I wonder if there's an alternative motive for old Rowdy to go ahead and give Bubba that push, Kevin.
You never know what these drivers think. I mean, the fact that a Chevy was pushing a Toyota seems uncharacteristic, but you never know what the deal is there. And I think Kyle knows, being 112 to the negative, he's got to go out and try to win Richmond, which he can. He's won Richmond, Michigan, Daytona. Anybody can win, of course. And then Darlington. These are all racetracks that Kyle Busch could potentially win, has won as a driver, but is RCR there? I just don't think, the speed that these guys are showing up with in practice and qualifying, Jeff, is just not. It's not good. It's not a good representation of, where this team is at. Can Kyle get in a position late, where he gets track position and gets a top 5, top 3? Yeah, he's good enough to do that. But to run off the truck fast, start on pole, and win races, I just don't see that happening for RCR this year.
Yeah, they've been struggling a lot this year, and they struggled a little bit last year as well. So it's tough to say. I think they need some reorganization of the entire staff. So we're going to, I don't know. That's tough to say, because Kyle Busch has been around a long time. He used to be the villain, and now he's gotten a little bit older. He's chilled a little bit. Denny Hamlin's kind of taken that villain spot, but both of them totally enjoy being the villain. They love it. I don't care whether you boo me or you cheer me. That means you're paying attention to me. And that's the exact quote that Kyle Busch had a few years ago, and Denny Hamlin's the same way now. He's like, hey, I don't care if they boo me or not. At least they know who I am, and everyone's paying attention.
Well, and I think, this whole experience has humbled Kyle a little bit. He's been seeing a different Kyle in these past few weeks interviews. Yeah, he got a dust up with Stenhouse at the All-Star race, and, he's going to be in some storylines here and there. But, just in general, we look at Pocono with him and Corey LaJoy. He was pretty calm, cool, and collected in his interview, thanking his sponsors. I don't want to say that he knows his time is up or limited and his winning days are over, but I think he just realizes that this is reality. This is what it's like to run for, I don't even want to say an underfunded team, just a team that is off the mark a bit, and just not having speed doesn't give you confidence as a race car driver. When you show up in a Gibbs Toyota or a Hendrick Chevy, you're probably going to go out and lead some laps, get some stage points. And so that's just not something Kyle's used to. So he's having to learn, that grit and fight and dig down and race hard. I know him and the team and, Cheddar's and all the sponsors he has behind him, they have the money to do it. The question is Kyle Busch going to win a race between now and Phoenix?
That's a tough one to call. I'm not quite sure to answer that one, Kevin, because, unless he gets a win in these next 4 races, he's definitely not going to point his way in my opinion. So it's going to be really rough for him. I mean, how many races has he gone now? This is his longest winless streak that he's had. I think it's somewhere around 48 races now. What he has not had a win.
Yeah, that sounds about right. He did find victory lane in early of 23. So we're over a year to a year and a half since Kyle Busch has found victory lane, obviously trying to extend his win streak. And that's a lot of pressure on him as well. We saw it almost happen a few years ago, Jeff, during COVID, when he went the entire season until late October, when that Texas Motor Speedway race was rained out to a Wednesday, and he finally found victory lane that year to keep the streak going. So he's been in this boat before.
He has, like I said, he's got a win for 19 years in a row. I'd like to see it. He's such a good driver, even if you like him or you don't like him, you got to admit he's one of the best drivers out there. So whether he makes the playoffs or not, hopefully he will get a win. I don't care if it's in the playoffs, even if he's not in there, it would still be cool to see Kyle Busch. But more than that, I definitely want to see the 19 of Truex get a win for his last full season of NASCAR Cup Series, Kevin.
Well, and when we get back from this break, we're headed to a track which, statistically is great for all the drivers we're talking about, right? Richmond is next on the list. We'll be there August 11th. It's a night race, which I love. We go back and take a look at the Toyota Owners 400 from the end of March earlier this year there, Jeff. Denny Hamlin wins it, led 17 laps. Kyle Larson finishes P3, leads 144 laps. And Martin Truex Jr. went out and dominated this race, led 228 laps and finished P4. So Truex 100%, I think, can and probably will win this Richmond race. If not, I think we're looking at Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin as the favorites when we get back from this midseason break.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that there too. And our good old friend Jenny from the Podium Finish photographer, she's going to be going to Richmond. We had her on a few weeks back, so she just got back from Pocono. So I think maybe we ought to get her back on here out now that she's been to Pocono and she's going to go hit Richmond. We might have to bring her on for a little segment. Little Miss Lady Flame 30 on Twitter for all you folks who want to look her up. She's awesome.
Yeah, we'll probably visit with her on our Monday, August 12th episode, recapping Richmond. If she's going to be available out there doing some photography, that'd be great to work her in. I know there's going to be some storylines as we count down to the playoffs here, Jeff. But I do think Richmond, is definitely a good track for Gibbs. We know Hendrick can win there as well. I just wonder, is this an opportunity for Chris Buescher to go up there and get him one, right? We saw him heat up around this time last year. Can the 17 finally solidify his way in? Is it finally Ty Gibbs's time? Can he get it done? Or is Bubba Wallace come in and say, look, I show you I can win a race? Definitely gonna be a lot of storylines. And I think all those guys looking at fantasy now, do you have any Larson left? Do you have any Hamlin left? Probably not. Maybe look at a guy like Joey Logano, ran P2 there. Right. Joey's had some speed, shows that he can win. He got it done at Nashville a few weeks ago. I think the 22 might be a good sleeper pick for Richmond.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, Joey was running well. I'll admit it. I am out of Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin right now. So I'm done. And of course, like I said, I picked Joey Logano for my fantasy this weekend. And what happens? Shit out of luck. So, at least 1 to 2 of my drivers every week just hit the wall, whether they're running well or not. They just get taken out of the race. But hey, that's just the way the cookie crumbles and the way the shit rolls, brother.
Yeah, and that's fantasy racing in NASCAR for sure. You're gonna have some up and down weeks, and it's tough to get them all picked up right. And figure out, okay, who am I trying to save? Am I trying to save somebody for Darlington? Does anyone even still have that on their list? Right, the Southern 500 is going to be the regular season finale. Right, we were kind of conditioned to have Daytona be the finale. We still will run Daytona late August, but then the Southern 500 is the last chance to get in, and we know the track too tough to tame. The Lady in Black, she's going to eat you up and spit you out. So if you're going into Darlington in a must-win situation, boy, that's going to be stressful.
Yes, it will, but I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be nice having a little bit of a break for a couple weeks, let everyone rest. But that is going to be one hell of a race to come back to. I think it's going to be a blast. Like you said, it's at night. I absolutely love it. Can't wait for it. But it'll be nice to have a little bit of time off for the next couple weeks, Kevin.
Yeah, looking forward to it. We're going to do the same and join NASCAR and take a little break here. But when we are back, of course, Truck Series will kick the action off. The NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series are going to run Richmond Saturday. That's a fantastic race. If people are just Cup racing fans, I highly recommend you click over to the truck race Saturday night. Short track Saturday night. It's great. Those guys put on a good show. And then Xfinity will be off. They're going to return in Michigan. So Xfinity has a real nice long break, Jeff. Those guys can hang out, regroup, and get ready to go as well. And then we are coming back for the Cookout 400. That's going to be on USA Sunday night. I love night races, Jeff. Under the lights there at Richmond. Watch those brake rotors glow. It's going to be good.
Absolutely love it. It really bummed me out, a few years ago when they took away Texas's night race, because we used to have one night race, one day race. And, then they took us and gave us a couple all-star races, and now we're down to just one. But I think we need to have, we've talked about this a lot, Kevin. We want more night races. Put them on a Saturday night. That way you don't have to worry about Sunday unless it gets rained out. But I want to see more night races, Kevin. I just love watching races under the lights.
I do too. And I think the more, that we can bring back, the better. We've really gotten away from it. And the Sunday night races, I'm okay with. We've seen Sunday night football. We see Sunday night baseball. A lot of sports run Sunday night. I'm okay with that. But I prefer to see a short track Saturday night, especially when we get into, around the playoff time when NFL is kicking off again. We don't have, any Saturday night races in the playoff. And we'd get a couple at Richmond, you get one here and there. If there's a rain delay, all of a sudden we run into the lights and it ends up being epic. So I agree with you, Jeff. I'd like to see a little bit more night racing going into 25.
Yeah, and like I said, put them on a Saturday night. Like I said, you just mentioned, there's night games for football and baseball and all that, but they don't have rain delays. So if you get a rain delay on a night race on a Sunday and you got to run it Monday, just like, hey, let's take Chicago a couple weeks ago. If that would have been a rain delay and they actually had to shorten it because of it getting dark, they got to reopen up the streets of Chicago. So they can't run on a Monday or a Tuesday like any other track can.
Yeah, very true. There's a lot of factors that go into that. So we'll enjoy it where we can get it. Watch some short track racing under the lights. Love Richmond. I think it's one of NASCAR's most underrated tracks, as far as it. I don't know if it's a crown jewel, but it always puts on great racing. It's just the total short track package that fans definitely can root for. And it should be good. I think, like I mentioned, watch out for Gibbs, watch out for those Hendrick guys. But I think the old Penske Ford of Joey Logano is a great sleeper pick. But I think I'm going to go on record to say Martin Truex Jr. will be our winner on Sunday, August 11th.
Looking forward to it, Kevin.
All right, y'all. We're going to get out of here and enjoy this summer break, if you will, a couple weeks away from racing. Still some NHRA going on. If, you need your racing fix, NHRA is running Sonoma next week. Looking forward to that as John Force continues to make his recovery over there. Coming along quite well, actually, Jeff. So that's good news on the NHRA side. But
absolutely.
Yeah, you bet. So we'll enjoy a couple weeks away from the Cup Series. We'll be back Monday, August 12th. Seems like a long ways from now, Jeff, but it'll be here before we know it. Enjoy the Olympics, everybody. And until then,
mash the gas.
I feel the engine screaming back. I feel the sweat